The courts, including the United States Supreme Court, have reviewed the legal issues in this case, and therefore I will not grant a 30-day stay. May God bless Karla Faye Tucker, and God bless her victims and their families.
In the early hours of Monday, June 13, 1983, the Houston Police Department swiftly responded to a distress call from Gregory Scott Traver, leading them to an apartment in northeastern Houston. There, they encountered a gruesome scene, two individuals savagely slain by a pickaxe. Initially perceived as a simple robbery gone awry, further scrutiny into the victims' backgrounds unveiled intriguing details, ultimately pointing fingers at a prime suspect, Karla Faye Tucker. But who was Karla Faye Tucker, and how did she become entangled in this chilling double homicide? Welcome back to Dark Case Files, where we explore the darkest mysteries from across the globe. Today, we delve into the unsettling case of Karla Tucker. Houston, Texas, a city renowned for its diversity and NASA's Johnson Space Center, harbors a darker side, an underbelly rife with crime. In 1983, this vibrant city was thrust into turmoil by a horrifying double murder, leaving its residents reeling in shock and disbelief. Gregory Scott Traver was waiting for his friend, Jerry Linden, to pick him up for work on the morning of June 13, 1983. They had plans to install an alarm system together that day. However, as the hours passed, Jerry never showed up. This was unusual because Jerry was known for being dependable. Concerned about his friend's absence, Gregory decided to check on Jerry himself. They lived close to each other, so he walked over to Jerry's apartment. Upon arrival, Gregory noticed something unsettling. The door was slightly open. With a sense of unease, he pushed the door open further and called out for Jerry, but there was no response. Inside, Gregory discovered a scene of disarray. The TV and stereo were missing, and Jerry's prized Harley-Davidson motorcycle was gone. As he searched the apartment, his anxiety grew. Eventually, he entered the spare bedroom, only to be met with a horrifying sight. Jerry lay lifeless on the floor, surrounded by a pool of blood. Beside him was a woman Gregory didn't recognize, also brutally attacked with a pickaxe. Overwhelmed by shock, Gregory rushed out of the apartment and immediately contacted the Houston Police Department to report the gruesome discovery. Upon their arrival, the police were confronted with a chaotic scene. Tools and motorcycle parts littered the floor, indicating a violent struggle had taken place. Both victims, Jerry and the unidentified woman, bore the marks of a savage attack. The pickaxe, lodged in the woman's chest, served as a grim reminder of the brutality of the crime. As investigators combed through the evidence, it became clear that the murders were likely the result of a botched robbery. Jerry's missing belongings, including his motorcycle and blue Camino pickup truck, pointed to theft as a motive. Further examination revealed that the victims' wallets were also missing, suggesting a targeted attack. Despite the absence of forced entry, neighbors reported hearing loud noises from the apartment earlier that morning. However, assuming it was nothing serious, they neglected to contact the authorities. This tragic oversight underscored the severity of the situation and left investigators grappling with unanswered questions about the events that transpired on that fateful day. Investigators speculated that the assailants gained entry into Jerry's apartment either with the victim's consent or due to an unlocked door. However, the brutality of the murders raised suspicions of a deliberate attack. Autopsy findings revealed that Jerry had suffered 20 stab wounds from a pickaxe, along with blunt force trauma to the skull. Similarly, the woman, identified as 32-year-old Deborah Ruth Thornton through fingerprints, endured 15 stab wounds, including a fatal blow to her heart.
I come in from my job 5 o'clock in the evening after a hard day's work, and I get in and my phone rings, and the first thing I know, guy's on the phone saying, my dad's on the phone saying, hey, you need to come over to the shop. I'm like, what's up? He says, your sister's been murdered. I'm like, no, Sure enough, she was. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe they'd kill my sister.
With the victims identified, investigators delved into their backgrounds, searching for clues to the motive behind the brutal killings. The scene suggested a level of violence beyond mere robbery, indicating a more personal motive. Their investigation led them to Jerry's recent acquaintance, Deborah, whom he had met at a pool party the night before the tragedy. While Jerry's friends confirmed the chance encounter, they revealed little else about Deborah, except that she seemed to be seeking an escape from her troubles at the party. Further inquiries revealed that Deborah was married with children, casting suspicion on her husband, Richard Thornton. Richard admitted to arguing with Deborah on the evening of June 12, 1983, and asking her to leave their home for the night. This revelation positioned Richard as the prime suspect in the eyes of the investigators, prompting them to scrutinize his alibi and delve deeper into his potential involvement in the gruesome murders. Richard shared that he and Deborah were having problems in their marriage, but he insisted he would never harm her. He mentioned that he didn't know about Deborah's affair with Jerry until then. Investigators checked Richard's story and found it to be true. However, they started looking into Deborah's father, William, who had a criminal record for assaulting young boys. Despite being a wealthy businessman in Texas, he was under investigation for tax issues. They found out Deborah was supposed to testify against him. Even though William denied any involvement, suspicions remained due to this information. On the other hand, when investigators delved into Jerry's past, they found some possible motives. Jerry was a well-known mechanic in Houston, and one name that kept coming up during their inquiries was Karla Faye Tucker. Karla, a lively 23-year-old known for her partying, was Jerry's ex-wife Sean's closest friend. But things between Karla and Jerry were far from friendly. Their troubles began a year before when Jerry met Sean. Karla thought Jerry wasn't right for Sean, and their personalities clashed. Their feud intensified when Karla found Jerry's Harley-Davidson parked in her living room, leaking oil onto her carpet. Furious, Karla kicked Jerry out of her apartment. Their animosity grew over months, especially when Karla and Sean went on a road trip together. Jerry got jealous and vandalized Karla's photo album, tearing up her only picture with her mother. Karla was furious and swore to get back at Jerry. She tried to convince Sean to leave Jerry, but they got married in February 1983 anyway. Despite this, Karla still hated Jerry. A month after Sean and Jerry got married, Sean visited Karla. When Karla found out Jerry was outside, she flew into a rage and punched him, breaking his glasses. Jerry ended up in the hospital with glass in his eye. Later, Sean and Jerry divorced in June 1983 due to Jerry's alleged abuse and differences in lifestyle. Seeking revenge for the abuse she claimed to have suffered, Sean took Jerry's bank card and emptied his account of $460. The two women went on a shopping spree, but rumors began to circulate that Jerry was planning revenge. Gossip spread that Jerry had paid a man $300 to shoot Karla in the face with a flare gun. Jerry's aim was to permanently disfigure Karla, which made her extremely angry when she found out. Karla and Jerry's tumultuous relationship caught the attention of investigators, who were intrigued by these infamous party girls. Karla Faye Tucker was born on November 18, 1959, to Larry and Carolyn Tucker. Her life was troubled from the start. Her older sisters, Kathy and Carrie, influenced her to smoke at the young age of 8. Adding to her challenges, Karla's parents divorced when she was 10. It was during this time that she discovered Larry Tucker was not her biological father, but rather the result of one of her mother's affairs. By the age of 12, Karla had already started experimenting with drugs and having intimate relations with men. Karla eventually dropped out of school at age 14 and followed her mother and sisters into prostitution. Her mother Carolyn taught Karla how to use her body to earn herself some money. It was around this period in her life that she and her sisters started meeting men who were involved with biker clubs. One of these bikers introduced Karla to the numbing pleasures of heroin. Both mother and daughter frequently traveled with rock bands like the Allman Brothers Band, the Marshall Tucker Band, and the Eagles as groupies. Karla became addicted to this newfound, unrestrained lifestyle. When Karla was just 16, she met Stephen Griffith, a handyman. They got married, but their home life was full of arguments and fights. Stephen even told his friends that Karla could hit harder than any man he knew. After 2 years, they broke up, and Karla went back to her risky lifestyle. Tragedy struck when Karla's mom, Carolyn, passed away when Karla was 20. In her grief, Karla found comfort in biker clubs and became friends with Sean. But things got complicated when Sean started dating Jerry Dean. Later, Karla met Danny Garrett, a 35-year-old bartender who was friends with Sean and Jerry. The four of them partied together, but Karla and Jerry never seemed to get along. Knowing Karla's background, investigators questioned her about the murders. Karla admitted she had problems with Jerry, but she denied any part in his and Deborah's deaths. She agreed to give her fingerprints and take a lie detector test, but then changed her mind after her boyfriend, Danny, advised against it. Investigators grew suspicious of Karla and Danny, especially after Karla backed out of the lie detector test. They visited them regularly, hoping to catch them slipping up, but Karla seemed relaxed and continued partying. Weeks passed, and investigators still had no solid evidence against them. Then, a homicide detective named J.C. Mosier got involved. He wasn't assigned to the case, but when he heard about Danny Garrett, he got curious. Mosier and Danny grew up in the same neighborhood, and Mosier was friends with Danny's ex-wife. Mosier called Danny's ex-wife to ask if she knew anything about Danny's connection to Karla and the Houston pickaxe double murder. But she said she doesn't know anything and she'll ask around. Mosier's curiosity would soon pay off as the police department was about to receive its biggest break in the shocking case.
It was really unbelievable. I'd never seen anything that terrible, and I worked at Homicide Division about 7-8 years and saw a lot of evil things being done, but never anything quite like this.
On July 18, 1983, the Houston Police Department received an urgent call. The caller sounded nervous and insisted on speaking to Mosier. When Mosier took the call, he recognized the voice. It was Doug Garrett, Danny Garrett's brother. Doug had crucial information about the pickaxe murder. As Mosier listened, Doug revealed two familiar names, Danny Garrett and Karla Faye Tucker. Mosier knew they needed to act quickly. Doug confessed that he had been keeping the secret for the past 5 weeks. He also mentioned a third person, James Lou Brand, a friend who accompanied the couple to Jerry's house on the night of the murders. Doug explained that the situation was escalating because Karla was now considering killing someone else to cover up the crime. He agreed to meet with investigators at the station and mentioned another person, Carrie Burrell, Karla's sister, who could corroborate the story. Doug and Carrie went to the police station and were interviewed separately. During his interview, Doug revealed that Karla's animosity toward Jerry was no secret among their circle of friends. He recounted that at 6:30 a.m. on Monday, June 13, 1983, Danny and Karla arrived at his house in a blue El Camino pickup truck. It was then Karla started bragging about killing Jerry and an unknown woman, with Danny backing up her story. Although Doug was hesitant to help them at first, he eventually gave in. He burned Jerry's wallet in an ashtray and threw the stolen motorcycle parts into a nearby ditch. In another interview room, Carrie told investigators that she had moved in with Doug about 2 weeks after the murder. She explained that she had become terrified of Karla after the murders and needed to get away. Carrie also revealed that Karla had started planning to kill her ex-husband, Ronnie Buell. Karla and Danny's new obsession with killing made them want to eliminate Ronnie because he knew about the double murder. After talking for 2 hours, Doug agreed to show investigators where he had dumped the motorcycle parts. Mosier then asked Doug to help them catch Karla and Danny by getting them to confess to the murder. Doug was nervous at first but realized that his nightmares wouldn't stop until justice was served, so he agreed. The investigators were ready to put their plan into action but were not prepared for the shocking details they would hear from the suspects. On the afternoon of July 20th, 1983, they taped a transmitter to Doug's chest and hid a recorder in his boot. Doug then rode his motorcycle to Karla's house, ready to capture their confession on tape. Just a block away from Karla's house, Mosier and several investigators waited in a van, listening in on the conversation. Doug made some small talk before steering the conversation towards the murder. Karla and Danny vividly described the events of June 11, 1983. Karla had thrown a birthday party for her sister, Carrie. The party lasted the whole weekend, with friends coming and going. There was a lot of alcohol and drug use, and the atmosphere was wild and chaotic. Karla told Doug that she was becoming more hyper and strung out. She and Danny explained that on Sunday evening, they were up late with their friend James. They were the last 3 people awake. That's when Karla came up with the idea to steal Jerry Dean's prized Harley-Davidson and sell the parts for extra cash. Karla expressed her intense hatred for Jerry and how she wanted to make him pay for everything he had done to her and Sean. Around 3 a.m. on Monday morning, June 13, 1983, Karla, Danny, and James went to Jerry's apartment. They got in because Karla had stolen Sean's set of house keys weeks earlier. Karla said she didn't know when she might need them, but they came in handy that night. When asked if they intended to kill anyone that night, both Karla and Danny said it wasn't planned, it just happened. Karla explained that she didn't know what she was doing or thinking, she just wanted to hurt Jerry. At first, they were just looking for things to steal. Karla and Danny opened the spare bedroom door and found Jerry asleep. Karla sat on Jerry and tried to hold him down. When Jerry woke up and grabbed her arms to push her off, Danny picked up a ball-peen hammer and struck Jerry on the head. In her drugged state, Karla grew irritated by the gurgling sounds Jerry was making and wanted them to stop. She grabbed a pickaxe and began swinging it into Jerry's body. Karla admitted she felt aroused by the act of stabbing Jerry. Danny then delivered the final blow that killed him. Danny left the room, and Karla slowly calmed down from her drug-induced rage. She then noticed a woman in Jerry's bed. Karla had been so focused on Jerry that she hadn't seen the woman before. Karla and the woman struggled until Danny returned to the room. In a rage once again, Karla kept hitting the woman with the pickaxe and eventually stabbed her in the heart. This was all the investigators needed to take action. As Doug left Karla's house, the investigators were ready and waiting. Danny was arrested by Mosier just a block away from the house while he was driving to work. At the same time, armed officers stormed into Karla's house, causing chaos. Karla, along with James LeBrand, who happened to be visiting that day, were also arrested and taken into custody. Police officers rounded up all the friends at Karla's house and took them in for questioning. These friends told the officers everything they knew, and their stories were identical, all explaining that Karla always hated Jerry. The only ones who stayed silent during questioning were Karla and Danny. Karla claimed she was so high on drugs that she couldn't remember anything about the night of the murders. On the evening of July 20th, 1983, Karla and Danny were arrested and charged with capital murder for killing Jerry Dean and Deborah Thornton. They were both detained at Harris County Jail without bail. In September 1983, Karla and Danny were tried separately for the murders. Karla was charged with both murders, but after testifying at Danny's hearing, the charge for Deborah's murder was dropped. Danny was only charged with Jerry's murder. Karla pleaded not guilty and stayed in jail awaiting trial. Prison officials noted that Karla remained outspoken and brash while in custody, not seeming to care about anything or anyone. However, things changed when Karla found religion while awaiting trial. She began to sober up from her years of alcohol and drug use. As her mind cleared, she started reading books from the jail library and eventually picked up the Bible for the first time. Karla told officials, fellow prisoners, and ministry workers that this was the first time she started to understand the consequences of her actions. She began attending Alcoholics Anonymous meetings and met others who had ruined their lives through substance abuse. Inspired by their stories, Karla started her own Bible study group and decided to improve herself through faith.
As you said, there's a freedom in it. When I was forgiven and I experienced that forgiveness, it freed me up inside to soar. It freed me up inside to go higher and to go deeper with the Lord. But when we're holding unforgiveness, we're blocking communication and intimacy with the Lord in our own lives, and bitterness can start to take root in us. Well, when God forgave me, I think He used that forgiveness and that love to reach down inside of me and take every root of evil, every root of horror that was in me, and literally pull it up and get rid of it and go back in me and fill up with His love.
Despite her new identity and efforts to change, justice still needed to be served. In April 1984, Karla went on trial for the murder of Jerry Dean. She pleaded not guilty but promised to tell the truth. Karla admitted she was heavily under the influence of drugs and alcohol during the murders. Her defense team argued that the killings were not premeditated but rather a sudden burst of anger during the robbery, fueled by substances. Some prosecution witnesses also supported this idea, believing Karla and Danny didn't know right from wrong at the time. The jury deliberated for an hour before finding Karla guilty on all charges. Before the judge made the final decision, Karla had the chance to testify on her own behalf. She spoke for nearly 5 hours, describing her past life and explaining that she only began to understand her actions clearly while in prison. Despite her passionate speech, Karla was sentenced to death by lethal injection, becoming the only woman on death row in Texas. In November 1985, Karla testified at Danny Garrett's trial, hoping he wouldn't be convicted. However, Danny was also sentenced to death by lethal injection. It was the last time Karla and Danny saw each other. He was sent to a detention facility near Huntsville, Texas, while Karla remained in Gatesville prison. Between 1984 and 1992, retrials and appeals for Karla were denied, but she gained a following of supporters. Although the legal system saw her as a murderer, many people viewed her as a symbol of reform. Initially, Karla accepted her fate to die by lethal injection, but after Danny Garrett died of liver disease in 1993, she decided to fight her case. During this time, she also found love and married prison chaplain Dana Lane Brown. In 1995, Karla made an appeal, and on June 22, 1997, she sought to have her death sentence commuted to life in prison. Her supporters included Pope John Paul II, Italian Prime Minister Romano Prodi, Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich, and televangelist Pat Robertson. Surprisingly, Ronald Carlson, Deborah's brother, and Peggy Cummings, Jerry's sister, also supported commutation after seeing Karla's transformation in prison.
When Karla Faye Tucker left that 3-foot pickaxe buried in the heart of my sister, I at that point wanted revenge. For 8 years of my life, I wanted to kill Karla Faye Tucker.
I asked the Lord to come into my life and to take that hatred and that pain out of my life, because it had ate at me so bad that I was ready to kill myself. The hardest thing I ever did was forgive Karla Faye Tucker, because out of anybody that should have hated her the most, it should have been me. I could have sat back and said, okay, Karla, I forgive you, that's it, and went on with my life and did the things that most people do. But no, what did I do? I took the time to get to know Karla. She was the firmest believer in the Lord that I've ever seen in my life. Nobody in this world can convince me that she was pulling a scam or that she was not real. She was a sinner saved by grace, and I've said this before and I'll say it again. If there's only going to be one person in heaven, it'll be her.
Even the warden of Texas Huntsville Prison testified that Karla was a model inmate.
The fate of Karla Faye Tucker now rests in the hands of the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles. It's up to them to recommend whether her death sentence should be reduced to life in prison. But it's up to Governor George W. Bush to decide if it will be.
On January 28, 1998, the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles denied Karla's request. She wrote a letter to Governor Bush, admitting her actions were of utter cruelty. However, hours before her execution, Governor Bush refused her final appeal. On February 2, 1998, Karla requested a peach, a banana, and a garden salad with ranch dressing as her last meal. News channels covered her final hours.
Karla Faye Tucker's apparent last day began at 6 behind the walls of this unit of the Texas State Prison System. Continuing her fast, the 39-year-old convicted murderer declined breakfast and has been refusing to eat.
I don't know what's going to happen either way, but I have to surrender that to the Lord.
Prison officials say she met with family from 8 until about noon. They hope to make her final hours as calm as possible, but say this will not be an easy day for anyone.
That's a traumatic situation for everybody involved, not only for the inmate, but also the inmates' families, for our correctional officers, and we try to keep...
There appears to be little chance the courts will stop the execution, but there are demonstrators here asking the sentence be commuted to life in prison.
We hope that Governor Bush will decide to show mercy in this case.
Tucker was convicted of killing Jerry Lynn Dean with a pickaxe and has also admitted killing Deborah Thornton as well. Thornton's husband says people should not feel any compassion for Tucker.
The same person who looks out from that television set is the same person who looked straight at my wife and threw a pickaxe into her body.
I'm not afraid of dying.
Tucker is a born-again Christian, and while she says she's not afraid of dying, her attorneys continue to fight for her life in both state and federal courts.
The U.S. Supreme Court has just handed down a decision. It has turned down Karla Faye Tucker's request for a stay of execution. That decision was just handed down by the Supreme Court. That means the state of Texas will move ahead with Karla Faye Tucker's execution. That is scheduled for later on this evening. Karla Faye Tucker still has one chance left. She is waiting to hear now from Governor Bush. He has said that he would not make a decision about a one-time 30-day reprieve until he heard from the Supreme Court. He has just heard from the Supreme Court. Again, that decision was to turn down Karla Faye Tucker's request for a stay of execution.
On February 3rd, 1998, Karla was led to the execution chamber. She requested her sister Carrie, husband Dana, and friends Jackie and Ken and Ronald Carlson be present. Karla was pronounced dead at 6:45 p.m., 8 minutes after receiving the injection. Karla was the first woman executed in Texas in 135 years since the reinstatement of capital punishment. Many spoke out after the execution.
It is a tear in the fabric of society when a murder happens. The death penalty is the thread and needle to sew it back together again.
Tucker, in 1983, was convicted of killing Jerry Lynn Dean with a pickaxe and admitted killing Thornton's wife, Deborah. Tucker found God and turned her life around, apparently. Enough for forgiveness from Texas Governor George W. Bush, but not a reprieve.
The courts, including the United States Supreme Court, have reviewed the legal issues in this case, and therefore I will not grant a 30-day stay. May God bless Karla Faye Tucker, and God bless her victims and their families.
The governor okayed the execution after the U.S. Supreme Court rejected 2 last-minute appeals. It, along with Texas's state courts and parole board, denied her clemency.
We feel like the system and the process has got to be changed. And that's no greater evidence than with Karla.
In the end, the sentence was carried out with a sense of loss imposed upon the Tucker family and peace for the Thorntons.
As she was dying, I did ask God to have mercy on her soul. It was the right thing to do. And her dying was also the right thing to do.
Karla was laid to rest at Forest Park Lawndale Cemetery in Houston after her execution. Accusations were made against Governor Bush for his lack of empathy during her appeal process. However, Bush later issued a statement saying he had forgiven Karla, but she still needed to face justice for taking 2 lives. Karla became the subject of several movies that depicted her troubled upbringing and how it led her down a path of crime. Years later, Richard Allen, the captain of the Death House team, told Werner Herzog that Karla's execution caused him to have an emotional breakdown. Allen resigned from his position in the Texas prison system and changed his stance on capital punishment, saying no one had the right to take another life, even if it was legal. Allen recalled his experience vividly, saying,
"When they brought in Karla Faye, I stayed back there with her. Now, definitely that was the first female that we were fixing to execute. I remember one thing so vividly, that it was an hour before, and I was standing there, and the chaplain was standing there, and she looked at me and she goes, 'Thank you, Captain Allen, for everything you've done.' I said, 'You're welcome.' You know, that's all I could say. And what else am I going to say? I'm fixing to strap you down another hour. Which we went, procedure and everything went just the way it was supposed to, you know. She was pronounced dead. I went back in there and I took the straps off, put her, you know, on the gurney, and let's go. We locked everything up and went about our business, and everything was fine. I had a little shop in the back, and it was 6 o'clock, and the news come on over the radio and started again. And for some reason, just out of the blue, hearing it triggered me seeing her, and I started shaking. Oh, what's wrong? And then
how badly did you shake?
It was a shake. It was a shake like I couldn't. Why am I shaking? And then I could see I was sweating, and tears. All of a sudden, and this is hurting.
For his part in the crime, James Lou Brandt was charged with accessory to murder and testified against Karla and Danny. However, there has been no further information about his sentencing or whereabouts since the murder occurred. The murders of Jerry Dean and Deborah Thornton were senseless and horrific. Karla's reformation changed the opinions of many who initially saw her only as a drug-addicted murderer. Her execution divided many who struggled with their moral beliefs. So, we ask you, do you believe Karla deserved the death penalty, or should her reformation in prison have been considered, and her sentence changed to life in prison? Let us know in the comments section below. If you found today's video interesting, please consider subscribing to our channel. Hit that like button and share our video with other crime enthusiasts. If you have any true crime stories you'd like us to cover, leave us a message in the comments section below.